Herbert Kickl, leader of the Austria's anti-immigration Freedom Party, is on his way to become Austria's new chancellor and its first far-right leader since the end of World War II. Meanwhile, Elon Musk made further comments regarding European governments and enraged leading politicians on the continent who were targeted by him. The latest to join the roasting, for lack of a better word, is UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. To discuss these latest developments and their possible aftermath, I'm joined by Jan Zielonka, professor of politics at the University of Warsaw. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm pleased to be with you.
So as we look at the events of today, Austrian president tasked the leader of the far-right Freedom Party with forming a coalition government. This sort of adds to the wave of instability among governments of EU member states. As, for example, the EU Observer pointed out, I quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes." How could this development affect Austria and the EU?
Well, when 2 decades ago, another leader, Jörg Haider, of the same party, FPO, joined the coalitions of Prime Minister Schussel, EU tried to boycott Austria for some time, but it didn't work in the end. And today, this party is a part of Austrian political establishment. It was a few times already in the coalition government, and now they may lead the coalition, which is a trend, I'm afraid, in many countries of Europe.
So this is definitely not the only place that is dealing with the fallout. What would you say is so far the response of other European leaders, other European governments to this news?
No, Mr. Orban, for instance, is probably very pleased. I would think that Mrs. Meloni is also pleased. And these are two important prime ministers in Europe. There are other people of the same political family in other countries who are hoping to be in the positions of FPO in their own country, in Germany and France in particular. This is where we are in the present-day Europe.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think it says about the political landscape of Europe? What is it a symbol of? Because you said that this group is getting bigger and bigger as we speak.
It's not only that this group is bigger and bigger, but also center-right party, conservative parties, which used to be, more moderate, are now adopting programs of the far-right parties, and are willing to govern with them. And this is the big problem. We recently had this in Holland, for instance, where Geert Wilders was not allowed to become prime minister, but he is behind the scenes, basically leading the coalition with his party as the largest in the Netherlands.
So we were talking about the developments, the latest developments in Austria, but I would like to take a broader look at whatever's happening in terms of comments made by Elon Musk, who has control over the X platform regarding internal politics of the European Union. A lot of people give him credit for Trump's re-election. Does Musk have an influence when it comes to EU politics and people's opinion-making choices when it comes to his recent comments?
Mr. Musk has enormous influence, if only because of the money he has. He has influence not only in America, but in other countries. He is, for instance, a great pal of Italian Prime Minister Mrs. Meloni. He mingles into politics of many European states in a rather undiplomatic way. His support for not just far-right party like AfD in Germany is controversial. He recently even told the extreme right party in Britain, led by Mr. Farage, that they should change the leader because Mr. Farage is too moderate. Well, these views are, let's put it mildly, rather controversial.
You're not the first person to mention it, I suppose, not the last. But the question that immediately comes to mind, is Poland next on Mr. Musk's list when it comes to the commentary regarding its internal politics, or this is something we do not have to even consider?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to Elon Musk, but I can imagine that for him, Poland is on the radar, and it only depends how much he will ally and with whom in the coming years. Will it be peace or confederacja, or even something new which he choose to support on the rather extreme right?
What would you say is in it for Musk? Is he somewhat fulfilling some sort of Donald Trump's agenda, or is he simply stirring the pot for his own personal gain?
Well, what is for Musk is obvious. It's always the same: power and glory. Whether he runs Mr. Trump or the other way around is irrelevant. They are now working together, and Mr. Musk is going to join administration, and we will see how it will go. One of the things you can say about Mr. Trump with certainty is that he is totally unpredictable.
How do you think that the European leaders, we heard from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the UK is no longer part of the European Union, but we've heard some commentary about, for example, the German government as well. How do you think those leaders are going to address this, and what's the way of working around Elon Musk's comments, considering this influence that he has in the social media?
Well, so far everybody is treating him like a hot potato. They're afraid to challenge him, partly because of his wealth and influence in social media, but partly because he's so close to the next president of the United States, which is the most influential country in the world, on which Europe defense depends. So they are very polite so far, but they are not happy.
Definitely, this isn't a reason to be happy. You mentioned that there is a lot on the table. Obviously, the world is looking towards the upcoming inauguration of the 47th President of the United States. But why would you say that Donald Trump allows Mr. Musk to, in a way, undermine the foreign relations with, for example, EU countries? Why do you think this is happening, and does he not care that there is something happening on that front?
Mr. Trump is ideologically on one line with Mr. Musk, and he is not a great supporter of the European integration. He is critical about states like Germany in particular, and let's put it this way: the United States was not only one of the greatest supporters of European integrations for decades, it was a European power sui generis. This is no longer the case. We've seen it already under first administration of President Trump. And I would be surprised if it will be any better in this sense. Of course, Mr. Trump has to pick up his friends and enemies. He cannot go into Cold War with China and Europe simultaneously. He needs Europe for many things to accomplish his agenda. but he would like to work with Europe of Mr. Orban, Kick, Wilders, and Meloni. And he will support that kind of politicians. And
Sorry to interrupt you, but since you mentioned Mrs. Meloni, there was obviously a meeting at Mar-a-Lago taking place between the Italian Prime Minister and the President-elect. Do you think that Giorgia Meloni could actually become a bridge between the US and the European Union? What do you think her role is going to be?
Well, she's one of the most important European politicians. Italy is the fourth largest economy, is a founding member of the European Union, and her position is, politically speaking, in Italy, very strong. So far, Mrs. Meloni sided with Americans against Russia as far as war in Ukraine is concerned. A position which is not very popular in Italy, which doesn't bother with Russia and suffers economically because of disruptions of energy supplies from Russia. But I expect that Mrs. Meloni will, as well, work with the new administration, or even better than the old one in Washington. And then very much depends whether she would stick to her line on Ukraine and Russia, or whether she will just take the side of President Trump.
Unfortunately, our time here on the program has come to an end. Thank you so much for joining me. Jan Zielonka, Professor of Politics at the University of Warsaw. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news for now, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World, as we'll be back in just a moment with more news and features.